And welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for this third Thursday. Of course, we are going to be talking about an exciting topic related to image, branding, and making sure that you are able to protect yourself in that social media world. So we are joined today by Richart Ruddie, who has for the last 11 years been working on image fixing within the industry. He started his Reputation Defender brand to help victims of defamation, harmful reviews, and figuring out creative ways to help his clients manage through difficult times. So we are so glad to have you, Rich, joining us to talk about this really important topic. And just so you know, Rich has been featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes, Washington Post, as well as the Denver Post and LA Times and numerous other publications, specifically for his work on online reputation management. So he's definitely going to be giving us some wonderful insights and maybe helping us with avoiding some particular pitfalls of navigating kind of this social world and developing our brand. So thank you so much, Rich, for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ball.
So let's jump right in and get started. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was doing SEO work where I was helping to just rank miscellaneous businesses and clients who wanted to promote their business online. And what happened was I had a friend who said, we have an issue with something that happened to me back when I was in college. And today I have these issues that were not just news sites. Today it's more, I have clients saying, my daughter did something on Snapchat or posted a TikTok video and something was wrong with it, and help us fix these social media issues that are spreading like wildfires. But 11 years ago, it wasn't, things didn't spread quite as fast online. And it was a news story about an incident that happened on college campus a few years before that. And I said, sure. I said, that's just doing reverse SEO, the opposite of instead of trying to rank a business online or promote, we would do the opposite by pushing down and creating good, positive content. And that's how the first client got started. And then that led to another referral and then another one, and then started a website specifically for reputation defending. It was called Profile Defenders. And grew that, and then have linked up with some private equity companies in Salt Lake City since, and we've grown now where we have different brands specializing, whether our newest brand we're rolling out is called Med Defenders, which is specific for the medical industry and health, and we still have the Profile Defenders brand, and things have been great and really amazing, helping clients who can call you almost in tears when you solve problems for them that they've really suffered through. So, and I think a lot of therapists probably can relate with clients that they help and they see that are struggling through issues, and the joy and intrinsic value you get when you solve an issue for somebody.
Yeah, well, it definitely sounds like there hasn't been a shortage of work for you, given the expansion and the need. And unfortunately, and in some ways, fortunately, we've found like internet and social media has been a great resource for being able to reach out to a lot of people and provide services. But of course, with every positive, there is always some negative. So I'm just thinking about like what you were talking about and what you do. And for our viewership who may not be familiar with the terms SEO, you're talking about search engine optimization, right? And so can you talk a little bit about what that actually means? Is that when you say ranking, is it ranking them or a person? Like,
sure, great question. So search engine optimization is where you try to promote and rank content online that is relevant for the search query or search keywords that somebody types into the search bar. So if we wanted to try to rank for best therapist in Orange County, California, we would want to make content that would rank all the best therapists in Orange County, California, and make sure that that result would be relevant and would be something that Google would see as a site that would match what people's interests or searches are. So I was doing that initially just for businesses just like that to rank for whatever their initial desired keyword is. And then it's morphed into people that are more interested in their brand and just making sure that they appear and look positive online and they don't have any ex-clients or ex-business partners, patients, or whomever it may be that would potentially post a false or negative content online that could hurt their brand and really be a drawback to their marketing that they're doing. So SEO at the end of the day is just making sure that you have a good profile online and that you're able to be found through designated keywords. Because if there's 25 other Dr. Balls in the area and somebody Googles in Dr. Ball therapy and they find the other Dr. Ball, then that would be a negative for you because you would lose out your business most likely to the other doctor.
Right. So in essence, it's like you're bringing attention to this individual based on like the keyword search. And so it sounds like currently you've built up a model for doing the reverse. So instead of highlighting that negative attention, you're highlighting more positive attention or more positive things versus any of that negative stuff that may have been online.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. So just thinking about that, clinicians, psychologists, mental health professionals, we are experts in therapy and conducting therapy. So we don't consider ourselves marketers, or most often aren't really focused on having a brand identity. We just are focused on helping people. So I'm just thinking about how to help clinicians learn more and be more effective in developing a brand, because this isn't something we learn in grad school. So given that we're not very well versed in becoming brand managers or even know anything about search engine optimization, like how do we grow into educating the community of our value? Like how do we help position not just therapists, but even psychology in some ways in a positive position using social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I always recommend to clients if they don't have a website is to create one, just because the majority of people are not going to go through a phone book like they did 25 years ago. They're going to go online and they're going to type in the name of your practice or something related to what your practice does. So having a website is step one. And from there, you can add into other social media channels such as Facebook. Facebook has a really just great business profile page. It tends to show up very high in both Google search results as well as people who may be searching directly through Facebook. And it's a great place where you can also start to share some knowledge and information both about your practice, what you guys do, and also just showing that you can be an expert and share knowledge that people may have questions about. Social media sites like Twitter, in a full-blown campaign, somebody would be looking for people who have questions that they're querying in Twitter or on a site like Quora, which is a question and answer website. And if you can go on there and you can share some of your knowledge and answer questions to people that are curious or have an issue, just kind of giving that initial knowledge and information to them tends to lead them to say, okay, well, this person was very knowledgeable. They shared that. I would, if I'm in the area, they're a potential physician or doctor or therapist that I can see, then I would contact them. And that's how the majority of people go through and find different help online. It's either through Googling the term and seeing that somebody's answered questions or shared knowledge. So that's what I would highly recommend. I know sometimes you don't want to feel like you're going back to school and be an academic, but when you share good knowledge and information online, people really tend to like that, and it attracts them. And then Google will allow you to create a business page. So that business page you can have, and it's possible where you can ask your clients, especially ones that would have had a good experience, to leave you good reviews. Those good reviews start to add up as you get more and more of those. Both clients that are looking to come and support your practice will see that you've gotten a lot of good reviews and want to come and support you as opposed to a potential competitor. So leveraging review sites, and Yelp is one that's very well known, but Yelp can be a slippery slope because they don't like to remove bad reviews, and in a way, it's almost like they favor false and fake reviews on there. So there's certain reviews, and I can share after the conference more information on what review sites and the risks and the benefits of each one.
Sure. I think that is a big piece to kind of explore, because with our profession, we are not allowed to solicit not recommendations, but reviews from current clients. And technically, we can potentially solicit reviews from, from past clients, so long as we can prove that if they provide a review, we're not going to create any undue harm if they want to come back into therapy. So what we're running into, in essence, is like ethical guidelines and laws that were written during a time before social media, before all of the internet. Well, not too much before the internet, but it's a bit outdated. And so we're not caught up as quickly as media is growing and expanding. So I know there are workarounds, and you can share a little bit more about how we can capture reviews that are anonymous and things like that, until we get to a point where we can actually solicit more from ongoing clientele. But I think because of that, like, clinicians feel stuck because, like, for example, Yelp, if someone posts a negative review and you can't remove it, you just feel like, should I have a media presence? Should I have a presence online? So what kinds of words of encouragement would you share for clinicians who are still breaking through this barrier and learning, like, how to navigate and learning how to lean into their value?
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult and tricky slope that we have to navigate carefully. And from all the different doctors and therapists and people that I deal with, they all, not one of them has the same feelings. So everybody has different mantra and feelings of what they feel they shouldn't do, or what we can and cannot do for them. So it can be very difficult. So outside of soliciting or trying to get people to share their feedback and their experience, there is other things, as I was saying briefly before, about sharing your knowledge and branding and things like that. So one thing that we always recommend, beyond just making the social media profiles and sharing your knowledge on there, is also you can do editorials, and you can share on different forums and websites where we can have things that be, for example, something like Dr. Ball shares her knowledge on do's and don'ts for patient management, or something related to therapy. And what would happen is people would see those results as they start to rank high in Google search results, along with your social media profiles and things like that. If you are succumbing or dealing with negative reviews, in some cases we can get those removed or deleted, especially if it's false or negative, or it may be some sort of what's called a Personal Information Privacy Act violation. So there's things like that can be contested, so to speak. So if you get a negative review, it's not the end of the world. There is hope, and there's solutions. But as far as soliciting, it can be a tricky slope, and it's just something I think each doctor or therapist just needs to navigate accordingly, based on their clients and what their situation is, and rapport with their clients. If they were okay doing it, or doing it almost as like a ghost account, where it doesn't have their actual name on the review, but it has their actual experience that they're willing to share publicly. So that's something we recommend from time to time, depending on the situation.
Oh, that's really helpful, because it sounds like there are options. And I think many clinicians sometimes feel like we don't know what to do or where to go, and needing support, and knowing that there are options makes a huge difference. And one thing that you talked about is having a brand. And I think that is really important in understanding, because you're saying, like, having your brand out there, putting it out there, making sure that people have access to it and know it. What do you mean specifically when you talk about having a brand management strategy? Like, what is your brand? Is it just your name? Is it what you do? How would you describe that?
Great question, Dr. Ball. And I would say it's both. It's both what you do and your name. Your name obviously is going to be a brand, but also the type of field in which you're in, whether it's a certain specialty within therapy, or whichever it is that a clinician may offer. You definitely want to be branding yourself as an expert in that field and sharing knowledge and information, whether it's through your own website where you have a little FAQ or information section or a blog, or through social media, or combining it between social media sites as well as your website, and then also through other editorial sites, news sites, health websites, anything that really would help kind of build up your brand. So other people who would be doing research would say, okay, this doctor is an expert or has shared really great knowledge that is helpful in this situation or scenario. So combining all three, obviously, if you do even one of those right and well, then it'll help grow your business and be sustainable. But if you can do multiple things right between your website and news or editorial sites and social media, then that will only help further grow your brand and client base.
Great. I mean, I think that's really helpful to know exactly what that is. So based on that, what would you say are some best practices for I can't talk to this evening. What are some best practices for brand management strategies?
Sure. So one really important thing is to go through all the different social media sites and to make sure that you register your brand name. So you don't want somebody else registering your name on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. We have a therapist now that we're helping where a client that they had was not happy. They had a disagreement and there was an assault that happened, and she did not have social media profiles on Twitter. What happened was the client registered her name on Twitter and has started posting negative attacks about her on Twitter. So they came to us naturally and said, here's the situation. We have an ex-client who's not well and is very upset. And they've now hijacked her Twitter account and is posting negative things. So if you were to type in her name and social media profile or her name, Twitter, you would see a profile that looks like it would be hers, but instead it's an ex-client who is essentially writing very nasty things online. So the number one best thing in brand management and best practices is making sure to register all of your IP, so to speak. So all your social media profiles with your name and your brand, because you don't want, whether it's an ex-partner, ex-client, or somebody else who's got a similar practice, to register the same name and not have you have the ability to do something about it.
Wow. I mean, that is really I wouldn't have even thought about somebody registering someone else's name as it kind of sounds like it blows my mind. We do have one question from our audience. Brittany writes, I have a friend who had a patient who wrote a horrible review about them. It made her practice plummet and she eventually had to lower her rates. What tips do you have that could have helped this person get out of that hole quicker?
Great question. So in some instances, we are able to remove and get a review deleted or removed, which obviously would have been the best solution. The next best is trying to get other good reviews to push that down. So typically a review left on whether it's Yelp or Google is going to be ranking as the newest review. As you get more reviews, just like with creating good content online, it will start to push it down lower on the page and things like that. Depending on the client situation, I've had therapists that I've worked with who have tried to reach out and work something out with the client. It's not necessarily always the best route, or it doesn't really make you feel warm and fuzzy having to ask a client to remove something. And it can have a Streisand effect, but in some instances I've seen where the client has reached out to the to their client and gotten them to remove it, whether it's for some sort of incentive. And sometimes it's a cheaper thing. Like in this case, they had to lower their rate, you said. They could have maybe offered some sort of incentive, whether a gift card or something, or a full refund, and the next session free, just something, because that negative review can do so much more damage than whatever the compensation is for the upset client. And I think a lot of consumers know nobody's perfect. They do understand that there's going to be a bad review here and there. So I think a mix of that is usually okay if you have one that's not totally egregious. But those are some of my suggestions of what she could have done.
Well, thank you so much for that. And that really kind of answers the next question that I had in mind about how to remove some of those negative reviews. And then also really like patrolling our reviews and controlling how a client reviews our practice is kind of outside of our scope. I'm just wondering, how do you think therapists can overcome these negative reviews to continue to reach clients in need?
Yeah, and that's another great question. So in some cases, if the review is not on an actual experience, there can be things where you can try and flag it. That's some of the things we know how to do, is what sort of language and explanation to put when you're flagging a review and the reason why you think it should be deleted or removed from the site. As I was saying, personally identifiable information, it's called PII, is becoming a really big thing with privacy acts now. So there's certain things where you can potentially make claims for privacy, and that this can't be public, both for the patient's safety and for your safety as a clinician or a doctor. And what we find is it depends on who it lands on. Sometimes it lands on the right person who understands PII and the risks of having certain things online, and they're good about complying and removing. And other times it's kind of a spin the wheel where we're continuously trying to work with a different contact or administrator to try and get it removed. But there's no one size fits all solution, unfortunately, for getting things deleted. So it's really on a case-by-case basis to go through and then find whichever type of potential violation or violation of a terms of service to try and get something removed for clinicians and doctors.
Well, it sounds like sooner rather than later, it would be great to reach out to an organization like yours to find out what our best strategies would be in remedying a situation. It also just makes me think, like, we get into this field to do supportive work for our clients to help them, essentially attain functioning. So it is a little bit of a step outside of our typical practice to think of these things. Although we're definitely doing that more and more. I'm just curious, like, what ways would you recommend that clinicians, how could we like manage the quantity of our reviews? What would you suggest that we do so that we're getting, a good number?
Yeah, so one thing we tell clients, if you have only 2 reviews currently, you don't necessarily want to all of a sudden rush out the gate and get 150 new reviews, because it looks a little suspicious. So slow and steady when possible is a good solution. But there's no one size fits all for how many reviews to get. It depends on the size of the practice.
Okay.
If somebody is seeing 150 patients a year, then it would be pretty hard for them to maybe have 150 reviews. But so it would depend on the practice and situation. But depending on which state each client is in, I can see if I can kind of fill out a guidelines of the do's and don'ts and what is currently legal in terms of helping to get good reviews and how they may be potentially solicited.
Okay, awesome. So we have another comment / question from one of our viewers. Jacqueline writes, if a client writes a negative review on Google Business and it's your only review, can you delete the practice and start over? And they're particularly fearing retaliation from an angry person who they declined to take on as a client. So they're trying to anticipate the worst case scenario just in case.
Yeah, so and that's all too common of a situation. So Google reviews like Yelp should only be coming from clients who have had an actual experience at the practice. So that may be a reason and a way to get that to be removed. We've done services for clients who wanted to essentially kind of delete their presence online, where through very creative social engineering, which I guess you could say, unfortunately, is how you have to solve a lot of problems online when Google or other places don't want to comply. So one thing you could do is you can create another Google business listing and change the name on the old listing. That's one of our top tricks that has worked really well for a lot of clients who have been in situations like that. And by changing the name of the old practice and creating a new one, you're essentially optimizing the new business listing on Google to show up, and de-optimizing the old listing to not show up for your name anymore. So one suggestion I had for a client, she was recently married. I said, okay, we'll change it to your married name on the old one, and then on the new one, we'll create you one with your practice name that it's under. And that worked magnificently. And she was almost in tears how we saved her practice.
Right. I mean, it's amazing what information is available online as well, with clients Googling you and wanting to keep things private. So the fact that there are these workarounds, I think, is fantastic, and that you'll probably be helping so many more clinicians in the future, because this is a big sticky issue for us, because we want to be supportive and we want to do our job, and yet we also have to deal with sometimes people are unhappy with the fact that we don't take them on, or they may not like the fact that that consultation, that free consultation, didn't feel like a fit. And so it really can be hard to navigate sometimes. So I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you think that we clinicians should be handling these negative reviews on social media, particularly because of the HIPAA compliance issues with patients?
Yeah, and I think that's, again, going back to how we might be able to position it, especially places like California are really, really tough and strong on consumer privacy. So if somebody's leaving an experience, you may have, and depending on which moderator gets it when it's flagged, you may be able to make a claim for it being a privacy violation, and not wanting to have that out there publicly. So in some cases, you can go that route. In other cases, it's, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's going to be on a case-by-case basis on how to respond or what to do. In some cases, if you ignore it, it kind of goes away. If you start to almost a social media battle with somebody, you can ignite a flame, and you want to be very cautious and careful of that. You don't want to be calling out, or even if you're completely in the right, telling somebody how incorrect they are, because then they may use that as fuel to then create other negative posts, social media commentary, and then they may be that person every time you do something good or you're promoting that on your social media, they feel like they want to get revenge. So it's a slippery slope, especially with the type of clientele that you deal with in the situation. So again, it's usually on a case-by-case basis, but the thing that we definitely recommend is to not create a bigger fire out of the situation. Mm-hmm. And if you can get it removed without having to contact the actual poster through whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or one of those sites, that usually is the best route to get them to moderate it on their own without you having to be the moderator and creating a bigger mess.
So I'm going to ask you kind of this question off the cuff, just in terms of what I've been reading about and just learning more about. There has been a particular issue where and this was a clinician who was representing a particular school or working in a school. And some parents were not excited about this person working in the school. So they kind of trolled their social media and looked at their likes and their comments and just selected what kind of met with their agenda. Is that something that you have seen or are seeing or seeing more of?
Well, it's 2021, so the answer is yes. Nobody's immune to anything. I mean, I think Kevin Hart had tweets that were 12 years old, and people were still attacking him for things, and it's. I wish there was a good solution, and I don't want to tell people to not express their feelings or their opinions, but you have to be conscious of other people's viewpoints, whether or not you agree with it. There's no easy answer to that question, unfortunately. And you could be the doctor who has those views and you stick very strong to it, and you may attract 65% of the people you would, and they'll be very loyal to you, but you may lose the other 35% that will come after and attack you for your views. And at that point, it's do you want to come out and say, those are my views and that's how I feel about it, and if you don't like it, don't join or support my practice, which is fine. But then you also run the risk of them then sharing your views and trying to make you out to look like a bad person, even if you're just sharing your opinions and feelings. So there's no easy answer to that question.
It's kind of like what I call a war of opinions, where that's what they are. It's not necessarily fact all the time. So some people are taking liberties with information that's out there and creating these stories, or writing statements that are completely untrue or really, really mean. So kind of piggybacking off of the last question, I'm just curious, how would you recommend that our viewership deal with these, which is essentially, I guess it would be libel if it's on Twitter and Instagram, or would it be slander because it could be on a video on YouTube? So how would you have us deal with these these issues, and is there a legal standing for us?
Yeah, so one of the issues, and you if you followed it, you definitely hear about it on Capitol Hill and senators talking about it. It's something called the Communications Decency Act. And CDA 230 means that we could post whatever we'd like on social media, and Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, they're not liable for the content that's posted. So somebody certainly could libel you or slander you, and the social media giants and tech companies would take no liability on their behalf. That may change in the next couple of years, which I think for the reputation management industry would be a big plus and a home run, because we could go and say, here's libel on your platform, you now have incentive to get this down. So there's not a quick solution today, but there may be laws that do come up and change that will help the business owners and people to fix that faster, because there'll be actual consequences for social media companies if they don't fix it. But in today's world, as of now, the best thing is really, if it's not posted over and over again and it's not catching fire, is to kind of ignore it and to have a good offense, creating good positive, whether it's social media posts and content, and drown it out with your good content. If you can't do that, then there may be cases for libel or slander, and there are attorneys that specialize in that. It just it can be very expensive just to get one thing removed, and then what happens is they can go out and they can repost the same thing just under a different pseudonym. So that's something you want to be careful of, or at least if the attorney was working with the client, to have something where there's a gag order where they can't create new content defaming you or slandering or whichever it is that they're doing.
Right. And it's a very slippery slope, because like you said, someone can create another account under your name if you don't already have it. So I love that recommendation of going ahead and making your accounts under your brand, or making accounts under your brand so no one else can take it. And just to follow up to Jacqueline's question about can you take the business down and start a new one? Jacqueline mentioned that the person who reviewed them gave them 1 star on CareDash, but they hadn't actually met. So CareDash is the company that was refusing to take down the review despite actually not meeting with the client. So that was the unfortunate situation there. And then we have another question from Sarah. Sarah says, how can I directly reply to a negative review without violating ethics, confidentiality, etc.? So yes, there are ways.
Yeah. So, that's a really good. One thing I could recommend, if it's a client, and you could actually say I would love to reply and share information, but due to ethics and laws that I follow, and almost giving yourself a pat on the back, showing people that I follow ethics and compliance and the law, and therefore I can't share directly publicly information about this. But then you can let the client know, please reach out. And actually, you'll find people who are, I guess therapists don't need to hear this. The people who are upset, they want to be heard. They want somebody they can vent to and they can speak to. So almost giving that person who is upset the opportunity to speak with you directly and vent and complain, sometimes will be the best therapy for them. And the resolution, hopefully at the end, you could say, I empathize with your situation, and at the end, potentially, you can even ask them if they can remove that commentary review. Again, depending on what it is and knowing the way to read the client. But I think sharing that they can not talk publicly about their information, I think is more of a positive. And from there, you can potentially also, if the client doesn't remove it, reaching out to care.com, whichever the site is, and letting them know that it's personal information that shouldn't be shared publicly, and it would be a violation, and to ask to have it removed.
Now, it definitely is a tactic that I've seen on Yelp quite a bit, where clinicians, they may not even have any reviews, but they will have their own review or statements indicating that they cannot speak to individual reviews. However, if someone were dissatisfied with their service, please feel free to reach out to them, or make time for them to discuss their dissatisfaction so that they can remedy it versus leaving a review. I've seen that a number of times across places. I'm always curious how that works. I'm also really curious if you can answer this question. A number of companies will allow you to review a clinician or a business, and then it'll say that it's verified. And of course, I'm thinking of like Amazon or mostly Amazon. I out myself. I shop at Amazon. So I'm wondering, what does that actually mean in terms of it being verified? And is that something that clinicians will have to be concerned about in terms of reviews?
Sure. So you're saying when a review is left, the actual person has a verified, like a check mark next to them?
Yeah. So I know that many of us probably look at the reviews that come through on any site. And sometimes these sites will say that this review has been verified, meaning that they either purchased the item. I think Target also does this too. So is that something that we should be thinking about for clinicians, whether they're on Yelp or I think there's another med site that it has like reviews for review this clinician, and then it'll ask questions like, did you see this clinician? Like, what does it actually mean for something to be verified?
Yeah, so and each site is slightly unique to it, but a verified review is typically going to be harder to get removed. With Yelp and other places, verified is where they've confirmed their name, their email. When they send an email confirmation to sign up, usually it's where they click through and they say this is a valid email address. So things like that typically is what it means to be verified, where some sites, maybe it's a realself.com or CareDash, somebody could leave a review completely anonymously, so it doesn't hold as much weight both with the website and for even people reading the review. But if you're going through as a moderator, if you were the website owner and you see this person left a review, somebody's asking to remove it, and it wasn't from a verified account, it's typically going to be easier either for us or for any clinician to make the request to try and have it removed, as opposed to when it's verified. So verified typically is proving that it was from an actual email address, not necessarily where they showed their identification card or something like that, but more so just verifying that it's a valid email.
Okay, that's really helpful. Just another question from our viewership. They're curious about how can they push down negative reviews in their search results by pushing up, their online content, such as their artwork or other events that they've done. So is this something that we would have to go to an expert for, or is this something that they're able to do independently?
Great question. So obviously it'll be faster for an expert to do it. I can share some placements, whether it's different social media sites that you can register profiles on, but that would be good. If you're an artist, then there's art sites, whether it's Saatchi Gallery or places like that, where you could go and you can create profiles, and having profiles on there, sharing your artwork. One thing that is one of the biggest signals in Google is having a clickable link back to your profile or your other websites. So by having that clickable link or the clickable text that goes to the next web page is a signal in Google's eyes that it's a validated or a recommended resource. If you think back to in college when you're reading a textbook, at the bottom of the page, the footnotes will have resources of where the information was pulled from. Well, Google was created with the same idea in mind, that each reference would be just like that in the textbook, and then that would be counted as a vote of confidence or recommendation. So as you can get more recommendations to whether it's your artwork or to your other academics or whatever it is that you want to promote, that is one of the best ways you can do that. And most sites, whether it's social media, you have the ability to share your personal bio plus a personal website or your other social media channels. So by doing that, that really helps those other content pieces online and URLs to show up higher.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think that we're learning so much, and there is so much more that we can learn, and how to navigate this unseen or unfamiliar territory. I'm just wondering, what recommendations you might have for therapists regarding global crisis communication and how to navigate that.
Sure. So global crisis communication is just creating a couple social media channels and website profiles. Typically, is probably not going to solve a big crisis like that. The best solution in situations like that is creating news articles. There are paid distribution press release platforms. That's one of the things that we really like to promote and use, especially in a time of crisis. By promoting on those sort of sites, whether it's PR Newswire or it's Business Wire, they tend to rank really well in the search results. They fill up the news slots if you were to click on the news tab, and they get syndicated by multiple other sites. So by pushing out releases and content on there, tends to really help in a time of crisis where you may be battling some news articles that are coming out that may be false or just attacking your character about an incident. So the best thing you can do is to fight back is to have as many other news articles that you can create, having your positive spin or your mantra on it, and sharing that with people who may be doing some research on your brand in a time of crisis.
Awesome. So it definitely takes a bit of planning and making sure that we all have access to companies like yours to help us navigate and even plan and secure a more positive ranking or positive view online. Do you have any thoughts about or suggestions about how to navigate complaints with the boards? So our licensing boards, such as like the Board of Psychology.
Ooh. So there are times where a board of psychology complaint may be online, and those can be difficult to push down because those websites have a lot of authority in Google's eyes and everything. Um, if when negotiating a board complaint, trying to make sure that part of the agreement is to have them not publish it online, obviously is going to be one of the best things to make somebody like our job easier and for your practice not to get hurt financially by having that online. So that's one of the best things. I had a client who was able to negotiate something like that during a settlement and was able to really save face from having a lot of things online that could have really hurt their business, as opposed to having it online and then really being damaging. So that's one thing. If you're in a position where you're in the negotiation stage or working through it, having that as a point for privacy, and you can claim privacy purposes, also for your own safety and self-interest to not have it online, as it could be damaging and dangerous for yourself as an individual. So those are some things that you can try. If that doesn't work, then I'll brainstorm and I can share some ideas at a later date, things that may be potentially to help.
I appreciate it. And thank you so much for all of this rich information. It's absolutely wonderful to be able to think about these scary things and understand that there are methods and steps that we can take to position ourselves in a positive way and continue to support our businesses and the growth. I'm just wondering, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us or our viewership this evening, or a takeaway that you really want us to make sure that we are holding on to?
Well, one thing is definitely, if you don't already secure your social media profile names and brands, to definitely go out and do that. If you get attacked or you have a negative review online, don't freak out and panic. It happens to everybody. Nobody is not susceptible to having bad reviews, and sometimes it is obviously a cost of doing business. As you see more patients, you're bound to have a sour apple, whether or not you did anything wrong. There's just people who are keyboard warriors, but there's always a solution long term, and things will get better over time if you can be proactive. So yeah, that's I think a good kind of overview and starting point. And I'll work on some resources for your audience as well.
Thank you. That's so wonderful. And thank you so much for your time and your expertise and knowledge in this area. It is so greatly appreciated. With that, I think we will wrap it up. And until next time we have you back and answer some more questions, I think our viewership really appreciated you taking the time to answer questions directly. And I think we all are leaving tonight feeling a bit more informed and can probably rest a little bit easier knowing what to do if this should happen to us.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ball. It was a pleasure, and have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.